What's good, y'all, and welcome to this video. In this one we shall be taking a closer look at Twyla now that she's available to be tested on the test server. As usual, we'll be going over all the abilities, how they look in-game and in general her kit. And then the closer test will be tomorrow, where we compare her with Kigiri to make the decision of, or to give ourselves the answer to the question of if we made a mistake by wasting all our resources on Kigiri and should we have kept them for her, or is she actually worse than him and we made the right choice by going for Kigiri. So yeah, let's get straight into it. Here we go. Before we get into it, let's have a look at her base stats. So base HP 28,000, base attack 6,300, which is decent enough for a fighter, 2,000 defense, only 1 tile range, rather also average cost at 17, and because she already is wearing some gear, the stats are looking a bit funky. But if we take a look, we have a normal attack interval of 2.6, so also pretty standard, pretty straightforward. Alright, so as usual we shall be starting with the talent. Each basic attack launched has a 25% chance to trigger Deranged Blade. The trigger chance of Deranged Blade is increased by 5% each time the ultimate is cast, so after 3 ultimate cast chances you have a 40% chance to trigger Deranged Blade. Deranged Blade deals 20% damage 12 times consecutively, so 240% damage, and inflicts bleed for 5 seconds. Now let's just casually assume she has a 1 second attack interval. That means you would be basically able to permanently keep the boss bleeding. Alright, interesting. I guess let's continue on with the rest of her kit. And that would be the basic attack. Basic attack, 1 tile range, deals 120% damage to 1 enemy. Next off, Symphony of Ruin. After not dealing damage for 2 seconds, increases rage regen auto by 20. This effect is removed upon dealing damage. Good enough. And then we have a Bloody Reprisal. Each time the ultimate is triggered, grants an extra 10% defense penetration. During the next ultimate, stacks up to 80% defense penetration, which means you need to trigger her ultimate 8 times and then you're gaining an extra 80% defense penetration during the next ultimate, which seems pretty incredible just from the high number being 80%. Then we have Slice and Dice. When activated, increases damage by 50% and reduces attack interval by 20%, granting Deranged Blade an extra 6 instances of damage, going from 12 to 18, giving her, instead of 240% damage, 360%, and also deals 200% damage 2 times to 1 enemy immediately, which ends up being 400% damage. Furthermore, she only has a very low rage cost of 600. Interesting. Oh, and obviously last but not least, before I forget about it, she has a bond skill with Hex. The Mad Devotee. Obtain hero Hex the Mad Diviner to unlock the following bonus. Reduces her first deployment cost by 6, so from 17 to 11, and each time Hex draws a card, Twyla permanently increases crit damage by 5% up to 60% crit damage, which would be after 12 cards drawn, and we all know Hex draws his cards pretty fast. Alright, now that we are all familiar with her kit, it's time for Awakenings. So, Awakening number 1. After triggering the ultimate 4 times, increases every single instance of Deranged Blade to 30%. So 4 times would mean not only 40% defense penetration, but 12 instances, so 240% damage, going to 12 instances of 30% damage, which would be 360% damage. And then on top of that, we also have the extra 6 instances from the ultimate, which means it would be 18 times 3, so 540% damage at 4 ultimates, 40% chance per attack of happening. So this does seem like a must-have A1. The A2 is just some extra basic attack, which is pretty much one of the strongest things you can get regardless. The A3 is 5-second longer ultimate duration, and that actually leads me to a very interesting thought. With the A1 being based upon ultimate activations, with her passive being focused around ultimate activations, isn't it actually harmful for her ultimate to last 5 extra seconds? So let's look at a simple example. It's going to cost us, I think it's starting with the 4th one, so it costs us 60 seconds of just ultimate time for her to be able to trigger her A1, which should be on the 4th ultimate, also for the 4th ultimate. But if you have her at A3, it's not going to cost you 60 seconds of ultimate activation time, but actually 75 seconds of ultimate time, which is 25% longer. Now, if that actually is an increase or a dip in DPS is always hard to say, but I guess it's going to be made up by the fact that heroes are almost always at their most powerful state in their ultimate, besides like super outliers like Ingrid. And I guess with her being mostly focused on the ranged blade and her attack to do damage, with the ultimate not doing all that much. But yeah, so that's a very interesting thought with the A3 I had. Now the A4 increases penetration by 8%, always very nice to have, though I guess maybe a bit redundant on her, with her having already up to 80% defense penetration. And then lastly, upon taking fatal damage for the first time, becomes immune to death for 6 seconds and increases damage by 100%. Now there's two things I'm curious about the A5. Number one, is it the permanent 100% damage increase as long as you let her die once? And also, number two, this awakening is rather weak-ish in comparison, because for most of the cases I guess you would just want to use a Valeria, and with the A5 being not that desirable, that actually makes it a rather good thing, because at the end of the day, if you then want her full potential, you only have to pull her 4 times if it turns out that the ultimate actually gives a significant damage increase, and if not, you might even only have to pull her twice. So yeah, that has been the awakenings, and yeah, so definitely interesting character. And on my first note, also I think the only bond skill that actively needs to rely on you having the other hero also on the field, because she only increases her crit damage if Hex is actually on the field alongside her. So on the note of this bond skill, and on me not wanting to let you go without showing you anything that you can base your information off, how about we have a DPS contest between her and Hex, featuring with the bond skill. Alright, so the way we'll be doing this is we'll be running Hex versus Twyla. We'll be taking out, we'll be just putting in Kigiri, Wrath and Volker for the speed bonus. It's gonna be a pretty standard comp when it comes to Guild Boss overall. And yeah, we'll be tackling Nightmare 3. It will have basically the same resistances as Nightmare 4, but Nightmare 4's shields are just a bit too annoying to do with 2 units. Besides that, both of them will be getting Invigoration buff, and for those curious how close the gear sets between the two actually are, let me show you. So if we were to swap the gear sets between Hex and Twyla, there would be a 0.5% difference in crit rate, so it doesn't make a difference, both would be still above 100%. A decrease in healing effect, which is also completely unimportant, a decrease in attack speed of 3, and a decrease in attack of 36, which is basically nothing at all. First off, we'll be running Spirit Siphon versus her in... versus her in a Ram tier, and then lastly, just for fun, we'll be running it at 10 times speed with Hex's exclusive artifact to see how big the difference actually turns out to be. So yeah, let's get into Nightmare 3 right here. Alright, so here we go, the race between a boyfriend and girlfriend. We'll be starting it off with Twyla and Hex. with one invigoration buff, and then another one, and then a Dolores, just to make sure that, here we go, 1, 2, and then we bring in the attack speed boosters for Twyla. And then we fast forward time. So we just start these ultimates early because Twyla has such a low ultimate cost and because Hex's ultimate is so very, very long. And then fast forward time, activate Dolores, take out Laure, and then continue onwards. So yeah, honestly pretty standard as GVG as it gets. And then obviously just bringing it through. And I think at this point we'll probably just fast forward to the end, or at least speed it up a bit, and then see what kind of results we'll be looking at. So while the gate boss is running sped up in the background, why don't I give you a couple interesting facts about Twyla and that fight right there. Throughout the gate boss, she was able to use her 4th ultimate before the 2nd shield of the gate boss. And actually throughout the fight, within the 4 minutes and 30 seconds of the gate boss, she was able to use her ultimate 9 times. And depending on other factors, you might even be able to crank out a 10th time. So she would be able to use her ultimate 10 times during this gate boss, which leaves you with an average of around 2 ultimates per minute. And definitely also hints towards her incredible potential for gate boss 2, which we should definitely more in depth have a look at. Alright, so here we are at the results, and oh boy, oh boy, we actually have a Twyla with a around, what would this be? Probably like a 10 to 15% lead over Hex. That's pretty good, but we also gotta keep in mind Hex definitely has this exclusive artifact, and Hex's awakenings are way more potent than hers, but for the moment she is in the lead. And yeah, why don't we actually have a look at what Hex versus Twyla looks like if Hex gets his exclusive artifact. Obviously just at +0 or at +10, but no updates. Alright, so here we are at the result screen, and as you can see, Hex has overtaken Twyla now that he has his exclusive artifact on hand. Twyla actually gained 2 million throughout an auto fight, which is very unusual, but at the end of the day just RNG. And Hex actually gained a whopping 26 million, or otherwise speaking a 20% damage increase just from equipping his exclusive artifact, which once more underlines the importance of his exclusive artifact, and also the way that he is still only A0 and is putting out these crazy numbers which are easily transferable over to Nightmare 4. And that is considering, again, he is A0, he has no awakenings, and they only make him stronger and stronger. So yeah, we shall find out if the same is actually true for Twyla, but as you can see, they are both definitely and very well easily something that could be compared to a power couple, dishing out 250 million damage just between the two of them, which would already bring you halfway to 50k on Nightmare 4. So yeah, I think that is also a very good way to end it, with expectations, a lot of expectations for Twyla, a lot of expectations for her and her performance in Guild Boss 2, and also she definitely does now look like a worthwhile competitor to compare against Kigiri. So yeah, as usual, if you appreciate the video, feel free to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe if you do feel like it, and we see each other in the next one. Peace out, bye bye.